more than 100 unique styles of beer, each with their own set of ingredients, process, guidelines, history, and experience. If you're a beer lover, an industry leader, or somewhere in between, a better knowledge of beer style will improve your life and your work.
Welcome to A Sense of Beer Style, essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. I'm Julia Herz.
And I'm Jeremy Storton.
We're advanced Cicerones, beer judges, home brewers, and we're excited to guide you through the vast and wonderful world of beer styles.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Ice cold beer on tap. We're in Belgian Ale land, Belgian Ale, and we're going to go with Belgian Pale Ale today. Are y'all ready? Are you ready, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I love this. Let's do this. I love this style.
Yeah, it's a great style, and frankly, it's not as common. It's in your beer studies. If you want to have your pool cue sharpened and aware, you definitely need it on the list. This is one that's kind of known for more in the Flemish region of Belgium. It is not an intense, really barrel you over style. It is definitely Belgian-esque, but more mellow and nuanced, certainly sessionable. We'll talk about the vital statistics. And I happen to think this is also a great food beer. Jeremy's going to get you aligned with ingredients and history while I open my example.
Yeah, this is such a fantastic beer. This is a Belgian Pale Ale. So imagine, look at that. Imagine, all throughout Europe, people are drinking these British pale ales or these British bitters and thinking, oh, this is great. I wonder if we brewed it and used our yeast down in Belgium, and that's kind of how this came out. And Julia, you mentioned that this is a style that's kind of hard to find, but you know what? You can brew this. You can brew this yourself. I've done it a few times. It's fantastic. It's very simple. The ingredients list is very, very straightforward. We're typically starting off with your pale base malts and adding a little bit of caramel malts, just like you would a British bitter, just like you would an American pale ale. That there's a lot of overlap there. We're using a British or even a German continental noble hops just to kind of give it that balance that it needs. The big kicker here, and we're going to talk about this more later, but the big kicker is you have a pale ale that you would expect to find in England, but this has that wonderful Belgian yeast that produces some wonderful esters and particularly the phenols to give it that nice little kick. And that's just really where that food pairability comes in, just all those wonderful flavors. But that ingredients list is so simple and so easy that, if you can't find one easy, just go brew it yourself. But that's our ingredient list. Simple. Let's head on to appearance since you have one in that beautiful Teku glass.
Excellent. And it's amber to copper, right? And this one is, I'm going to call it amber headed to copper. It's perfect. Clarity is very good. This actually is a little cloudy. Clarity, very good means not brilliant, right? It can have a little bit of haze. This maybe has a little bit more. I'd probably ding it if I was judging it for that. Creamy, rocky, white collar of foam. I would say that it's collapsing pretty quickly, a little more quickly than I would normally like, but we'll give it some allowances. My version's aged, so let's keep that in mind. And very well carbonated, which you're definitely seeing the nucleation sites coaxing some rising bubbles. If you're watching us on YouTube, and if not, you're not missing out. Keep listening and watch next time. But well carbonated as well.
Yeah. When it comes to aroma, we're already going to talk about what we compare this to, but this is your pale ale, whether it's from England or from America, like I said. And so what do we normally expect out of those beers? We expect a moderate, malty, toasty, biscuity, nutty kind of flavor. And with that ingredients list we talked about, we've got our pale malts, we've got our crystal malts, but it depends on which crystal malts you're using. If you're using a lower Lovabond, like 40 or 60, then you can get these beautiful, like honey type of notes out of it. If you have a darker 80 to up to 120 Lovabond, you can start getting caramel and other flavors like that, some dark dried fruits and raisins. So if you are smelling this, some of these aromas, you can start to deduce what ingredients may have gone into this. You can deduce this stuff from the color as well. But these are all the aromas that we can smell from just the malt alone. We're going to get into a moderate to moderately high esters that are going to smell like palm fruit, like apples, pears. Could be citrus, orange in particular. It could be even stone fruits, the cherries, the plums, the apricots. And this is what the fermentation Belgian yeast character is going to bring. We're going to get a little bit of a lower to moderate spice. I don't like spicy. Spice. I don't like the word spicy. That means heat. Spice like. So it's going to be like spices out of your spice drawer, spice cabinet. We're going to get these floral, herbal, peppery notes that come out of that. And these are all the phenols that are coming from that as well. You may not smell the hops very much because it is going to be low to moderate. That if you do smell them, great, but they're not necessarily going to be there. They're going to be real low. But keep in mind that this beer is going to be balanced toward the malt and balanced toward the fermentation character most of all. And that's an important thing too. So if you get a big old bitter bomb, this may not be that. But that's what I expect from the aroma. How about the flavor, since you're tasting it?
And I am and enjoying it, and it will carry over from the aroma. So kind of put a note in most everything Jeremy said, because you're also going to get a sense of that in the flavor then with more depth because of what you can perceive taste-wise versus aromatic-wise. And it's also important to note in the history, the style guidelines talk about this beer style was actually created in 1904 in a competition for a regional specialty that would bring back some attention and interest from all those, wow, English ales being imported into Belgium. What are you talking about? They had to compete for the attention. And then also really paying attention to the continental lagers of the day that were getting attention. So that's why this beer is more malt focused, right? Fermentation character is always going to be an aspect of any Belgian beer, but I think they really focused on the malt in this aspect to compete with those English ales that they were trying to grab the attention, the hearts, minds, and wallets of people that were drinking those in the lagers. So flavor is really malty first and foremost. Jeremy mentioned some of the descriptors, but you get an essence of dark honeys. You get some biscuit or biscotti, in my view, and then all that.
Good call.
Yeah, and then all that fruitiness really does come through with the esters that you were talking about. Maybe a little bit of marmalade I'm getting. And then the fermentation characteristics don't just bring you esters, which are a byproduct of ale yeast, Belgian ale yeast particularly, but also phenols. So the phenols of like maybe pink peppercorns, right? That's the spiciness that I'm looking for, not something in a different direction. It's not cinnamon. It's more of a spice of pink peppercorns and the like from those phenols, and maybe a little bit of taste and sip while I get inspiration. And it almost goes to lemon for sure. So the bitterness can be, based on style guidelines, medium high to medium low. That's maddening, but it's okay. Brewer's choice, right? And the example I'm getting, again, it's very aged, is not very bitter, and that's acceptable. But it's also got a dry, balanced finish. It's not a high residual sugar beer. That's why they're sessionable again. And so you're looking for that drier finish. And then the balance is what the style guidelines talk about. It's a dance. It's an interplay. It's a romantic interlude between the fermentation characteristics, the malt characteristics, the low residual sugar, the mild ethanol, and then also that carbonic acid and carbonation. So, and included in that is also, the phenols and esters. So I think that's a good overview, and we would need to still complete the whole flavor triangle of aromatic compounds, basic taste, which I just kind of covered, and Jeremy's mouthfeel. So take us away.
Yeah, so this is a beer that is just meant to be consumed on a daily basis. It's not meant to be aged a long time, and so what that translates to is we're still going to have some body in this. Usually, with something that's well aged and been sitting around for a while, it tends to dry out, especially in the realm of Belgian beers. This should be a medium low to medium body. It should be something that we enjoy, pretty early after it's packaged or kegged, whatever it may be. We're looking at a no to low alcohol warming. It's not a strong beer. It's a kind of I don't want to call it a session beer because it still has some strength to it, but it's on the lower spectrum. It's meant to be consumed. But this is a Belgian beer after all, and so most Belgian beers tend to be very well carbonated, quite spritzy, and that's part of that pairability, that cleansing of the palate after we eat. That makes it so great with food, and this is no different. This should be a moderate to moderately high carbonation beer, and so expect those cleansing bubbles to refresh your palate in between bites. But that's our mouthfeel. Well, let's talk about style comparison. What does this compare to?
So this is going to be the perfect one when you're really trying to get your blind tasting down. I love to serve people examples of one beer from one country that really is easy to point to, right? And this, because the Belgian yeast aspect, you're going to be able to say this is a Belgian style beer. Sit it with or taste it with, your English pale ales, which this was modeled after, except you've got so much more influence because of that Belgian ale yeast. So it's going to knock you into the lane or zone of knowing eventually, when you do it enough, to say, that's what Belgian yeast character is about, right? If you try it against those English pale ales. So that's the easy one to just do is get some ordinary bitter or maybe not strong bitter. Yeah, ordinary bitter and English ordinary bitter and taste it with this pale ale. Really focus on where's the yeast, and then your brain's going to go to, this one's much more malt forward. Yes, it's got ale yeast esters, but very different and nuanced and subtle compared to this one, which is from Belgium, and it's got that Belgian fermentation characteristic.
Yeah. So when it comes to commercial examples, Julia, you nailed this. This is hard to find. In fact, the beer style that first bubbles up to the surface when we think of a Belgian pale ale is Deconic. And sadly, I have not come across a Deconic in my beer career, and I'm dying to. So if anyone has a good note for me to share with me to find one, please send it my way. But Deconic is the beer style that kind of defines, or is the beer that defines this beer style. But we're also looking at Palm Doble and De Reich Special. Those are listed on the commercial examples for the BJCP. But I'm going to stick to my guns on this one, and I know you're going to support me on this, Julia. If you can't find it, go brew it, because this is a simple, easy beer to brew, and what a great way to explore the flavor than by creating it yourself. That said, let's talk about some numbers.
Well said, well said. And so for vital statistics, again, it'll help you align. Original gravity, which is really mostly necessary if you're brewing it, not when you're tasting it, but 1048 to 1054, that then always the OG, the gravity, gives us an indication of the potential alcohol by volume. So if it's 1048 to 1054 for this Belgian pale ale, the ABV is 4.8 to 5.5, very close to those final numbers in the original gravity. Then final gravity tells you it finishes drier, but it's actually got some residual sugar, 1010 to 1014. And then international bitterness units is 20 to 30. I would say enough to definitely be noticeable more than just as a preservative aspect, but more often than not too bitter is going to, these beers are not going to display too bitter. And then standard reference method, or SRM, for the color is 8 to 14. That's that amber to copper range, absolutely not brown. That'd be way too dark. Absolutely not gold. That'd be way too light. So those are the colors in between, is amber and copper. And I toss it back to Jeremy.
Yeah, if once again, if you're a European brewery convention sort of person, then the color numbers we're looking at about 16 to 28, just to keep it in that gold to amber color. Not quite copper, but it's definitely heading in that direction. If you're an original Plato person, we're looking at 12 to 13 and a half, and final Plato about 2.5 to 3.5. And if you look at your strength of beer in terms of Plato, we're looking at 9.5 to 10, a real narrow kind of span there. But that being said, those are the numbers. The type of glass, this is fun because, frankly, if I'm having a food pairing beer, I default to my stemmed tulip on any given day. If I had one beer glass to choose from, it would be that stemmed tulip. Julia is showing in the video, she's showing this stemmed teku glass, which is also fantastic. It's very functional, as well as being kind of dressed up and good looking as well. but we can also, you would also expect to find a glass or a beer like this, the Belgian Pale Ale, in a goblet by the name of a boleki, if I pronounce that right. But it has a very special glass that is typically served. Keep in mind that in Belgium, each beer brand pretty much has its own glass to go with it. And if you go to a bar in Belgium and say, I'll have one of those, if they don't have a glass that's free and clean, they won't serve it, because that's how important this whole experience and this presentation of the beer within its brand is so important. So keep that in mind, that a nicer glass is par for the course on this one. The temperature I want this, I want this probably in the same that I'd have with a British bitter or an American pale. I definitely do not want this ice cold. If I pull this from the bottom of the cooler, I'm going to let it sit for a while or sit in my hand to warm up, because it's just going to get more and more expressive. So in the Fahrenheit regions, I really want this around 42 to 44 degrees. For the Celsius regions, I want this kind of 6 to 7 degrees. I want it to have a little bit. I want to release those volatiles. Let's just get down to it. I want to release those volatiles so they can tickle my nose and tickle my fancy at the same time. But let's talk about pairings at this point.
Food pairings, because this beer is modeled after your English style ales, I'm going to say fish and chips. We definitely think that would go well. Fish and chips is going to have breading on the fish, right? And the fried aspect of those fries. You're going to have those aspects kind of meet, marry, and bridge over to the pale malts that are used. And I wouldn't be shy to put a little malt vinegar on top either, and see if that kind of even brightens up the beer, almost like a little spritz of lemon. So that, and then going to dessert, like a bread pudding is recommended on craftbeer.com, and I love it. Bread pudding, like sticky bread pudding, something dense and kind of sweet, and you could actually put vanilla ice cream on it. It may or may not work, but without the vanilla ice cream, I absolutely see it going in that direction and working very, very well.
For me, Julia, I think you nailed it per the norm. Fried foods is fantastic with this. I want something savory. I want something seafood oriented. One of my favorite pairings I've had with this beer was actually at a fantastic brewery that brewed the style, and I ordered a big plate full of fries. They were excellent fries, just like the ones that you think about when you think about like the best fries. And I actually, in true fashion of, if I were in Belgium, instead of the ketchup or instead of some fry sauce, I had these with mayonnaise. And for those of you who are watching this video or listening to this Stylecast, I can hear you cringing. I promise I was in the same place. I thought fries and mayonnaise, hell no, I will never do that, until I tried it one time and was forever sold. Particularly with good fries, the mayonnaise, and this beer style. It is fantastic. I dare you to try it.
I'm gonna. Thanks for daring me.
Anyway, that is the Belgian Pale Ale. It's a fun style. It's a uncommon style, but it is a fantastic style, and it's one that we really need to know and appreciate, and hopefully kind of bring back. It fits within that family of pale ales, but with their nice little variations. It's a nice little pale ale family, and they offer different benefits depending on which one it is. So find it, brew it, drink it, enjoy it.
Yes, enjoy, be well. Thanks for listening and watching.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to A Sense of Beer Style, the essential beer style training for those who want to lead in food and beverage. With advanced Cicerones, me, Julia,
and me, Jeremy.
Tune into the next episode as we continue exploring the world of beer styles and what to make of them. We encourage you to listen to the prepisodes to build your foundation and better understand beer styles.
And before the next episode, I'd like to ask you to review the show and let us know what you'd like featured in upcoming episodes. Until next time, here's to you and your sense of beer style. Thank you for listening. Cheers.